Om Shanti. Om Shanti. You're very spaced out in the hall. I think it's a new experience for me to take a class in Baba's big hall, in Baba's big home. And so the theme is unlimited maturity, and we have an unlimited family and unlimited space. You can hear okay? Can't hear. Is that better? Have to shout a bit? Okay. So Om Shanti to everyone in this big unlimited space. Can you hear me now? Okay, I have to get used to speaking in this big space, in this big hall, in Baba's unlimited home. And it really does feel like you're in the unlimited. And of course, when you come in Baba's season, especially December, end of December, March, the last meeting, this hall is overflowing completely. The hall, the balconies, people outside. It really is an unlimited family. And I know it was Daddyji's dream that to have a place where all the Brahmins could get together. So our theme today is unlimited maturity. You got translation? No translation. Okay. So you can hear me in English, but no translation. Okay. I think Sister Meera chose the topic on the basis of the blessing in today's Murli. And so I'm looking at that blessing, thinking about it. And Baba mentioned how we are close to have the intoxication of being close to the seed, the 2 leaves, and the Trimurti, right? Can you hear okay now? It's all right? Okay. Yes? And so, in having that unlimited maturity or an unlimited vision, an unlimited awareness, the first thing is to remember the unlimited family that I come from. What is my heritage as a Brahmin? Shiv Baba the seed, Mama and Baba, the first 2 leaves, the Trimurti, how God plays his role, and then all of us children. And so even if you've been a few months in Gyan, or many years in Gyan, we are part of that family. You know, when you have a very noble family, and a child, a son or a daughter is born into that family, they have that pride of who are my ancestors. The child might be very little, very young, but I belong to a royal family or whatever it is. It's not about age, it's about lineage, it's about it's about heritage, who we belong to, and how that unlimited family from the seed, Shiv Baba, has influenced who we are. Because normally when you're born into a family, you know, there's always the question, what is stronger? You know, the scientists talk about nature or nurture. In other words, what you have brought with you, or what is the influence that you, or what influences you as you grow up. And of course, in our situation, both things work. Because when you're born into this family, as soon as you see Baba, something awakens within you, right? And you know, this is where I belong. And that's what you bring with you. The original nature of the soul you're bringing with you. And Baba awakens that in one way or another. I remember when I first came to Baba, one of the things that awakened the soul was Brahma Bhojan. Did that happen for anyone else? We'd got to know a little bit of Baba's Gyan, come to an exhibition, taken a few days of the course, and then we were invited. This was in Scotland where there wasn't any centre, so we were on holiday, and then we came to meet the BKs, or we met the BKs, and then it was Sudesh Didi. You all know Sudesh Didi. She invited us for lunch to the place where they were staying. And she cooked a very simple meal. And I looked at this meal and I began to taste it, and I thought I was transported to heaven. Does that happen to anyone? And actually, it was last year at the Global Hospital. It was an interesting program. Sister Manda from the retreat centre in Oxford, she was interviewing myself, Sister Genti and Sister Gayatri. And she had all our stories, so she asked very awkward questions. But I was relating this, and I said, I don't know what the menu was, but I can't remember the menu, but it was very simple. And then Sister Genti said, I know what the menu was. Because apparently Sister Sudesh had specially phoned her in London and said, there's this couple coming for lunch, and this is what I'm making for lunch, and I'm going to make them Baba's children. So she knew the menu, even 30 years later. Baha Baba, it's really the contact with our big family in whatever way that wakes us up. And we develop that pride. This is the family I belong to. Yesterday I'd gone up to Madhubanjas for a couple of hours, and it was my first trip since arriving. And I went to the Tower of Peace, and I love to stand there, I'm sure you all do. And I thought to myself, as I usually do actually, I am at the highest place on earth. It's an amazing thought that my fortune in my life has brought me again and again to the highest place on this earth. Intoxicating, right? So our heritage is huge. So one is what we bring with us, what Baba awakens within us. And then, of course, being steeped in the atmosphere of this beautiful, godly family, we are then nurtured in a very beautiful way. And it's up to each one of us to accept that nurture. Because we know, don't we, that the Brahmin family isn't perfect. Is it perfect? It is? Some are nodding, some are saying no, some are saying yes. Okay, let's put it another way. Yes, the family is perfect. Are all the people in the family perfect? Well, I'm not perfect, so I can't expect everybody else to be perfect. So yes, there are all the rough edges that need to be smoothed. But we are in a safe place. We're in a place where everyone is moving towards the same destination. We're not in a place where people are moving in different directions. We are together, and that's very, very powerful. But in practice, having such an unlimited maturity. You know, this word maturity is itself a very interesting one. What does it mean? What does it mean to all of you? If there's maturity in your life, there's stability in your life, there's contentment in your life, and there's also the ability to understand the significance of everything. Not just to see things on the surface, or to see things only through your own imagination, or through the influence of your own sanskaras. Baba gave me a beautiful blessing once. I'm sure many of you have heard me relate it, but at the point at which I'd come to meet Baba, and I'd recently moved to London, and Baba and I'd been, there's a lovely saying, of course Baba's the ocean of knowledge, but sometimes his children are the ocean of mistakes, And I was the ocean of mistakes at that time, probably still am, but but I'll tell you another story about that related to Baba's time. The first time, again, apologies if you've heard this story, the first time that a fridge, the yajna had a fridge, I think it was in Bombay, because if you can imagine in the 50s and 60s, fridges were quite rare commodities. They were quite rare abroad. I remember being a little girl, it must have been in the 50s sometime, or the 1960s. I remember when my mother got her first fridge, and I couldn't understand why she was so excited about this box arriving in the kitchen. But the first fridge, and so the sister, looking after the centre, made ice cream. And so, of course, it was Dada and Ankishore at that time who wrote to Baba. And, of course, they hadn't had ice cream for so many years because they don't buy ice cream from the bazaar. And he wrote to Baba and he said, "Baba, I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. I forgot to remember Baba before I ate the ice cream." And then Baba wrote back to him and said, "Never mind, child. You're the ocean of mistakes anyway, so one more won't matter too much." And then he wrote back to Baba and said, "Okay, Baba, then please tell that sister to make ice cream again so that I can put my mistake right." This way they would joke with Baba. But that time meeting Baba, Baba looked at me and Baba said, "There's nothing wrong, you're just a little bit innocent, Bola, innocent." And everybody was laughing. It was just a very lovely, lovely scene. And then Baba said to me, "But never mind. The hand of the innocent father, Bolanath, is on the head of his innocent children." In other words, the praise of Bolanath, "I will put right what goes wrong." I thought that's a very useful blessing. All of my mistakes will turn out better in the long run anyway. But at that time I said to Baba, "Baba, Daddy Janki's always saying to me to become more mature." So Baba paused and Baba said, "Whenever you receive an instruction or a direction, don't just listen to the words, but listen to the meaning behind the words. And in that way, you will become mature." And it was as if Baba opened up something in my intellect at that moment, because Baba's blessings are like boons. They have a power with them. And I really took that on board. It has helped me from that day to this day. And it's not just for when we receive an instruction or a suggestion and advice. When you're hearing Baba's Murli, how am I listening to Baba's Murli? Am I just hearing the words? Am I just hearing the concepts on the surface? Or do I understand the significance behind what Baba's telling me? How are these versions that Baba's telling me going to change my consciousness, change my thinking, change my perception? If I don't allow Baba's words to do that for me, then it remains on the surface. And then I'll start reacting. I don't understand that. I don't believe in that. This doesn't relate to me, etc., etc., etc. Because I haven't understood what significance it has for me, for I, the soul, in my path towards the karmatit stage, at whatever step I am on that journey. And so, understanding the significance is very important, and for that, we need to go beyond our own limitations and influences. When Daddy took up this morning about the chit, the memory track, and when she was in the UK in May, she took up that quite a lot. And as you've heard Daddy say on many occasions, it's so important to clean out the memory track. And Sister Genti at one point had given a very sort of clear definition, which I found very, very helpful. He said in the mind there are the thoughts and the feelings. Okay? So if you think about it, if I think about something, it brings up feelings in me. Am I right? The two go together. Then, the intellect has the understanding and the conscience. So it's my intellect. If my intellect is, accurate, not influenced by anything else, it will allow me to have right understanding, deep understanding, and it will allow my conscience to work in a refined way. Right? And then the chit, this layer, the memory track. This is the personality of this birth, the influences of this birth, the memories of this birth that we carry in the memory track. And then even beyond that, the sanskaras, which are the very deeply ingrained habits that can also come from the past births. Because I, the soul, carry many things with me, not just of this birth, but of many births, many, many deep-seated tendencies. And at least, the first step I can take, think about that, it's clear, yeah, those levels. The mind, I can begin to make that effort to change my thinking. As I get new information in the intellect, as I hear Baba's Murli, my awareness, my attitude and my thinking begins to change. Then Baba teaches us, clean out the memory track. Now this is where Daddy was mentioning something very interesting. How we don't only carry the influence of our own sanskars in that memory track, but we carry the influence of the sanskars of others. So that very often my personality is not really my personality. It's actually a function, or it's actually made up of the influences of the personality of others, because I'm impressed by them. And I was seeing myself, I've seen over the years how much that influence of others, how I see others, but more importantly, how I perceive they see me, that has a big influence on how I see and perceive myself. Am I right? Very big influence. And when that influence is strong, it's as if we're really living in a world of imagination. We're not living in the real world. And, I began to see this a few years back, and I'm still seeing it, because I'm still seeing where I fall prey to those influences. And I was watching a particular scene the other day of two people interacting, and I observed in myself how my interpretation of that scene is so different today than a few years back. And it made me realize how much I was living in imagination. And then I thought, well, how much today am I living in imagination? At what point will I come to reality? And somehow I would have interpreted it before as a kind of being left out, or comparing, or I'm not as good as that person. And today I was understanding how that person has their own needs and where they're at. And it wasn't a question of comparison. It was just seeing who they are and seeing who I am. But very often when we witness things, or we see things, or we talk to people, we use that to reinforce our own weak thinking, our own weak thoughts about ourselves. Am I right? Does it make sense? So basically, to be free, to clean out that memory track, I have to step away from that influence into the unlimited, into that stage of unlimited maturity. I have to make my intellect very, very free. And there's a lot of power in that. One method Baba gives about cleaning out the chit, Baba often says, write down all the sins of this birth and give it to Baba. And I'd done that very early on in Gyan. Everything I could remember, give it to Baba. One method to begin the process. But this other aspect of understanding the difference, basically, the contrast between my intellect when it's taking on the personality of others, and my intellect when it's yukt and free. There's a big difference in experience. And from Amrit Vela on, I need to be training my intellect and keeping it free, keeping it clear. And I know I have to make a lot more effort in that. But I'm sharing with you how I've seen it move over the years, and where I feel I need to go further, and I'm sure we're all moving along in the same boat. We are in the same boat, aren't we? You know, sometimes you'll hear somebody speak about something. I'm sure this has happened to you. And you will feel that it's not them speaking, it's somebody else's opinions who are speaking through them. Have you heard that? We get influenced to such an extent that we can't tell the difference between, or there's no longer any boundary between the personality of the one who's influencing me, and I, myself, I, the soul. And I feel we have to be so, so careful of this. To stay, I loved the 2 words that Baba gave in the Borg message on Thursday. Words we know a lot, words we hear often. All the gyan we hear so often, but how much do we practice? Being the observer and having Baba as my companion. Sati and Sakshi. The words rhyme in Hindi very often. They go together, but they go together beautifully in English too, although they don't rhyme. Baba as my companion, being the observer. And they're together because if you are an observer on your own, it's a little bit dry. It's a little bit lonely. I've often not liked this thought of being an observer. It's as if I'm aloof, and I don't like that. But being an observer with Baba as your companion is very, very different. If you remember when you used to go to the movies, hope nobody goes now. You wouldn't like to go to the movies on your own, would you? You always like to share it with someone, a partner, or at least a friend, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, wherever. When you're watching something and you're enjoying it, you want to share it. Come with me. And as we're observing this beautiful drama of life, and we see, when you observe it, you see somebody, today we were talking about something and someone said, it's like Baba's the master weaver. When you just are yog-yukt and you do something, you do something at the right time. When you're an observer of the drama, you know what to do, when to do, how to do. And you see all the pieces falling into place to conspire to success in that task. And so it's like, if I'm with Baba as my companion, he's a master weaver, weaving the scenes of the drama for me. And I like that analogy. And a tapestry is very beautiful to look at, very exquisite. And this drama is a tapestry. Not all the threads are beautiful. Many scenes in this drama are scenes of suffering. We can't pretend that they're not. But even then, there is something to learn, something of benefit somewhere. It may be very well hidden, but it is there. I watched Daddy Janki go through, I've seen her in the past, go through her different, what can I say, she doesn't like us to use the word sickness, but different tests that her body puts her through. And every time, and often she'll be in severe pain, she has incredible power of tolerance. I think my power of tolerance and hers, that saying, is like a candle to the sun, literally. She tolerates so much. Sometimes she tolerates severe pain and doesn't even tell us. We don't know. But every time she goes through that, she uses it as like a time to be in a laboratory, herself with Baba. She experiments deeply with the power of silence. She experiments deeply with the power of her thoughts. She experiments deeply with how to heal herself. And she always comes back with new lessons for us. It's actually quite remarkable. At the moment, Daddy Manohar is critical. And the body is there, but the soul must be benefiting with Baba. For these daddies, Baba doesn't let a moment go to waste. I'll tell you a story. It's from the scriptures about benefit in everything. You know the story about the king and his advisor? Who knows that story? Not too many people, okay. You know it? No? Yes? There was a king, and he had an advisor. The only advice that the king would give him was one advice. Benefit in everything, benefit in everything. Okay? So one day the king was chopping firewood, and he chopped off his little finger, half his little finger. And the advisor said to him, benefit in everything, benefit in everything. And the king got very angry and said, I've just chopped off half my finger. What are you telling me benefit? And he threw the advisor in jail. Okay. A few weeks later, the king was out in the forest. And he was hunting. And then from some tribe or something, they captured him. And they wanted to use him as a sacrifice to the gods. And they were all ready to, cut his throat. Then they noticed he had half his little finger missing. And they said, okay, you're not a complete sacrifice. So they let him go. So he went home and he remembered his advisor. Benefit in everything. So he was full of remorse. I threw that advisor in jail, and look, it was beneficial that I cut off half my finger. So then, when he got back, immediately he freed the advisor from the jail, and he said, I'm so sorry that I put you in jail. I'm really sorry. Look, you told me there was benefit in everything, and I didn't believe you. And what did the advisor say? Benefit in everything. Benefit in everything, because if you hadn't put me in the jail, I would have been out hunting with you. I would have been a complete sacrifice. So I would have gone. Of course, it's a story, but, it just illustrates the point where you can't see something, there is something. It's quite amazing. So being the observer with Baba, enjoying with Baba, I observe with alertness, with accuracy, with joy. It's detachment, but detachment also is a joyful stage, not a dry stage. And I often say this to people, especially those who are newer in Baba's knowledge. Don't mix up, don't confuse detachment with rejection, right? Because sometimes in our effort to be detached, we reject others. Especially often in the early days, our Lokik families. And then we have to go back and repair the damage. So, whatever we're doing, my intellect, an observer with Baba, enjoying every scene of the drama, making drama my friend, being positive about every scene, which means no waste thinking about any scene. Now, I'm not perfect in this, so if I'm sharing something, I never like to be a preacher and say, well, I give you the impression I'm doing this 100%, so, you should do it. So I'm saying that when I do it, it's extremely useful, extremely powerful. So I'm recommending it because I've experienced it. And yes, I still need to do it 100%, and I look forward to that day. But of course, if Daddy was here, she'd say, what do you mean, look forward to that day? Do it today. Today is the day. Now. But that brings us to another aspect. Because when you are really an observer of the drama, with Baba as your companion, you are really in the present. And I observe the daddies, well, especially Daddy Janki. I observe Daddyji. The present moment exists for them fully. You know, they used to say about Baba, how Baba was so present in whatever he was doing. So when he ate, he ate. When he wrote a letter, he wrote a letter. When Baba was speaking the Murli through him, that's what was happening. When he was in yoga, he was in yoga. And what do? We're eating, but we're not eating. Our mind is what we did before, what we have to do. Maybe it's just me. No? You know, we're doing something and our mind is somewhere else. And we cause ourselves a loss through that. Because we're not focused. We can't take the power from Baba that we need. And we can't give full power to the present moment. And we can't have that full success in the present moment. When I was talking to Daddy, it was a few months back over some personal situation, and she said to me, will have an effect, your subtle thoughts will come into practice. And I really took that on board because it was a family situation and it was to do with somebody in particular. And she was warning me that with my subtle thoughts of worrying about that person, it's going to draw me back into the karma of that situation, and to be careful. And I took that on board very well, to make sure then my subtle thoughts were not then subtle thoughts of worry, but subtle thoughts of good wishes and subtle thoughts of faith that absolutely everything is going to be okay. Because our subtle thoughts do have an effect, and that's how the daddies work. They have this because there's always situations, but Daddy will always say, and she'll say, this is what Baba used to say, everything will be okay, everything will be okay, don't worry. She said this recently. And she subtly has that deep faith inside, without doubt, everything will be okay. Total faith. So then that becomes sakar, that becomes practical, that happens. And it cuts through the obstacles. When we have a subtle thought of worry, we bring a difficulty to ourselves. It creates even that subtle thought of worry about someone or something is the first act in creating a more involved karmic account. It begins with a subtle thought. You with me? Action is the end result. But before that was the subtlety in our thinking. And I'm experiencing more and more, as time goes on, how powerful our subtle thoughts are, one way or another. And I suppose it's a bit like this homeopathic principle, you know? The more subtle something is, the more effective it is. And what happens is that We may be on the surface thinking good thoughts or studying well, doing whatever we have to do, but subtly inside there's a little fear, a little doubt. We don't quite believe what we're thinking. We undermine our powerful thought. Do you understand what I mean? So that subtle thought has to go all the way through from the sanskar to the mind, through all the levels. The deep sanskar of faith, the only influence of jnana in my chit, not the influence of the doubts of others, the fears of others, the situation of others, the intellect being clear, and the thoughts on every level powerful. So it's a very powerful mechanism. And I see in Daddy how she's created that sanskar in herself of absolute faith, absolute faith. There's no question. I think many of you may not have met Daddy Chandramani. She left the body quite a number of years ago, and again, apologies to those who've heard this story, but it is very illustrative of this. She served in the Punjab, and at that time there was, quite a lot of terrorism at that time. So, and it was a very, it was a very dangerous time, basically. And she was asked a question. It was in a small gathering in Madhuban, I remember, upstairs. No Shantivan at that time. I think, no, not even Gyan Sarovar. So it must be many, many years back. And somebody asked her a question, Daddy, what would you do if a terrorist came towards you and pointed a gun at you? Okay? Now what would you think her answer would be? I thought, in my limited intellect at that time, I thought, well, she would say, okay, I will remember Baba, it will be fine, I'll be safe, I'll take my intellect up above, some answer like that, right? No? Yes? Her answer, and in fact, the first time the person asked the question, she didn't want to give an answer, she wasn't interested, but he persisted, it was brother actually. And she looked at him as if to say, well, if you really want me to answer this. And she said, but how is it possible that anyone could even point a gun at me? If they came towards me, they would see light. If they tried to raise their arm, their muscles would go weak. and it blew my mind when I heard her answer. Because she had such a deep sanskar of faith that she couldn't even entertain the possibility of being in any danger. Do you see? And I thought, well, my faith is not, I have a different level. Because one is to perceive the danger and then think how you will remove the danger. But the other is to say, well, it's just not possible. And I see with the daddies, their faith is so strong. We'll come to Daddy and say, this is happening and this is an obstacle, and she'll refuse to see it. She'll refuse to speak about it. It's going to be fine, it's all right. But Daddy, what about this? What about that? It's going to be fine. And that's what Baba would do. So subtly inside, we need that level of total faith. And that's really part of that unlimited maturity. Who do we belong to? Who is our companion? And I would always feel with the daddies, and I saw this with Daddyji. Daddyji has been the one who, through the years, has had this vision of the expansion of Madhuban. We are sitting in Diamond Hall today because of Daddyji's vision. And for Daddy Janki, of course, sharing that, but of course the vision of Baba's work in so many countries. We're all sitting here today because Daddy Janki had that vision that Baba's jewels are to be found everywhere, every continent, even in the countries where you would think we don't have any business to go to. No, Baba's jewels are there. That's why we're all here today. 2 daddies, their vision have brought us here. But I would observe Dadiji that when she would speak about the expansion of the facilities or something that she wanted to happen, it wasn't just a wish. It was as if she could see it in front of her. And she just had to walk into it. It was so clear in her vision. And the other day, Daddy said, either, I can't remember whether it was in a smaller gathering or whether it was in the main class, but she talked about the success of service is according to the quality of our thinking. Excuse me a moment. It's according to the quality of our thinking. And again, it goes back to this subtle law. And I know sometimes in myself, sometimes I can have a very powerful vision for Baba's service, and then you know it's Baba working. And sometimes, as perhaps is a little bit my nature too, I can be a little bit cautious. And so sometimes I don't get the balance quite right. The cautiousness will take over a little bit, and then it's as if I suppress that vision. And sometimes the ego takes over too, and yes, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and I haven't got the balance to see what's appropriate. Right? You with me? So with the daddies, because they're so clear, they're without the influence of their own ego, the visions they have for service, it's as if it's just visible in front of them. They just have to walk into it. It's so powerful, and we are all pulled along with that vision. But now we're in such a time in Baba's Yagya that it's always been so, but I feel even more. Baba really needs that maturity from us to be able to be so yogyukt, so far-sighted, so that Baba can use us as powerful instruments wherever we are. And, you know, this is the state of wisdom. True wisdom. True wisdom doesn't take sides, doesn't think in terms of alternatives, doesn't just think about applying the law, but true wisdom thinks about what is right and appropriate in that situation. You see? With immaturity, I'll know the law and I'll apply the law, and that's it. With maturity, I'll understand what is right and what is appropriate. I was trying to think, there were some examples that hasn't come to mind now, but I'll try to think of an example, see if it comes to mind. But one example I can give you. There was one person who was going to come and live in Madhuban. This is during Sakar Baba's time. And of course, in a way, we can't just take this example and say we can do this kind of thing, because it's up to the daddies to do this kind of thing. But it just gives an example in a sense. And he used to drink used to drink whiskey. And people were saying to Baba, Baba, how can this person come to Madhuban? They still drink whiskey. And Baba said, it's okay, don't worry. Somebody who was well known to the Yagya, an old child of Baba's. And when this man came to Madhuban, he brought his whiskey flask with him. When he got into the atmosphere of Madhuban, he threw it down the drain and never touched it again. So it's like Baba just applying the law? No. Understanding what is right, of course, Baba Trikaldarshi, Baba far-sighted. Somebody said another story, actually just now recently. Somebody was meant to come to Madhuban, then something had happened, so disciplines had gone a little bit astray. And that person really repented and had been 4 months really pucker and everything. And the person in question, the sister, said, no, you can't come to Madhuban. And then that person left the body a few months later. So, okay, maybe we can't take these decisions about what is right and what is appropriate. But something I found for myself is that if I'm not 100% sure about something, or I feel that there's room for not just the law, but compassion, then I must check. I mustn't just rely on my own intellect applying the law. And very often when I feel I'm applying the law, I say, hold on, let me think a little bit broader and make sure. And this is very important, to be very mature, to know when to ask the questions, when to check with somebody who is senior to you, and when to just take your decisions on your own. This is also part of maturity, because very often when we don't have that maturity, we take limited decisions. We need to listen very carefully and understand what we have to do. So an unlimited intellect, a far-sighted intellect, goes to the 3 worlds and back, goes around the whole cycle, understands 84 births, and with this perspective applies wisdom. Now it's time for Baba's remembrance, appropriate. Just a couple more things about love and law. In the conversations related to the global functioning, which you've been hearing about, question was asked to Daddy Janki about this, the balance of love and law, and our answer is, well, there's only love. Have love, and love becomes the law. And then Daddy Gulzar sort of expanded on that a little and saying that, well, it's right. The true love within, the being an instrument to share Baba's love. We know love, Baba's love, pure love, divine love, becomes the law when we put that love into practice and we see the success of applying the love. And the success is that things work out right, people are contented, we create happiness, we move forward together. This is where love shows itself in the law, in the practical application. And so first the love. So I'm always aware myself that if the law is coming first in my mind, I'm likely to make a mistake. But if the love is coming first, then I understand what to do that will make the law successful. You know, when we come in front of Avyat Baba, and Baba will be sitting on the stage in a couple of days in the body of the instrument, Baba tells us very refined things, very deep things. I remember, I think it's 2 years back, and I don't know if it's going to happen again. Baba came in October. Baba started to give us the result of our homework. Baba basically was telling us that we'd failed in every aspect of the homework. But we all felt so good about it. Baba was telling us with so much love. And then afterwards you realize, oh, this is what Baba was saying. But as he was saying it, the love was such that you felt that happiness and you felt that enthusiasm and courage to carry on. Baba, the greatest, greatest teacher, because Baba is the ocean of love. The time for Dharmaraj will come, and it might be coming sooner than we think, but still, Baba, today, the ocean of love. And in the message that was shared for the global functioning that was read in the class yesterday, I think, Baba indicating there's still time to practice that bodiless stage, to be the embodiment, and to move forward. Okay, let me leave it there. It's been an hour's class. Anybody got any questions or comments? Is there another mic? It's possible to have any questions or comments? You've all been listening very patiently, so you might have something you want to say. Anyone? No one? Yep. Question. Is there another mic, or how do we do it?
I wanted to ask if someone in the family, not a senior,
Okay, speak up.
not a senior, but someone always applies first the law, and he always trying to tell you what's right to do and what's not right to do. And what can you do about the feelings which come afterwards? Like, let's say that you have done whatever you felt right to do, and then you see everything falls apart, and you ask yourself, why hadn't you done it like he said? So what can we do in those? How can I make sure my faith doesn't go away even though things are falling apart?
Okay, so let's see if I understand your question. Somebody is always telling you, this is right, this is right, this is what you have to do. You do what you think, but then you find out that they were right and you didn't do the right thing. For example, how not to lose faith in yourself. Okay, I think maybe what's behind this too is that when somebody is always telling us, do this, do this, do this, so this is right, and they're not telling us with that love, it creates a resistance in us. And then we do the opposite. Am I right? Yes. So actually it's not so much that, well, I thought what I felt was right. That resistance made me go in the other direction. And okay, even though that person wasn't telling me with that love, but they knew what was right. So first of all, have a lot of love for yourself. Don't, understand what's happening inside. Because this is the thing, when you're told off a lot, or you're made to feel that you've done wrong a lot, your ego gets very hurt. We get a bit defensive. And that clouds the intellect, and it's difficult to see the difference between right and wrong then. We think we're right and they're wrong, and in a way, neither is right or wrong. Love is the way. But in that situation, one is that I need to very much stay in my own self-respect. So even if they're not telling me with love, I can at least listen with love. And if I listen with love and respect, then I'll be able to sort out in my mind what is useful for me to follow and what perhaps is not so useful, and act accordingly. But we make mistakes because of our reactions or because of our ego. But then, ultimately, if I'm not sure, well, check with somebody who is senior to me, who I do trust, who can guide me. But also, sometimes when somebody is always telling me off, in a way, somewhere I've given them permission to do it. There's something in the dynamic where I'm allowing them to do that to me. And so, again, my own self-respect, giving them, that other person, a lot of love and respect, we begin to melt them and create a relationship. Because service is all about relationships. If the relationships are good, service flows. And I'm not now talking about being too familiar, or, we know our disciplines and our boundaries, but good relationships based on respect and regard and compassion and love, healthy relationships where there are good feelings. So I feel even if somebody's telling me something, they're telling me as a friend, not trying to be my boss. So the effort is not so much in them. One is to figure out what I have to do, but the other is to understand, how do I now make the relationship a good one so that I benefit from that person's wisdom. So I think that's the task in hand. Yeah? Okay. Yeah?
Maureen, you spoke about subtle thoughts, and you told us be careful about them. But okay, we have this subtle thought within us, so what to do when they are coming?
You had the question, be careful of subtle thoughts. Okay, we have these subtle thoughts or these doubts, so what to do when they come to us? Simple answer, change them. The first step is recognizing them. If I recognize those subtle thoughts, subtle weak thoughts, the subtle good thoughts, great, increase them. Subtle weak thoughts, at least if I see they're coming, I'm recognizing them. There's a big problem when I don't even recognize them, because they're so much part of my makeup, so much part of my personality, so much part of my thinking, I think it's normal. But if I recognize it, then with Baba's help, with courage, change. This is the check and change that Baba speaks of. So if at that moment I say to Baba, Baba, no. Now I want to have different thoughts, powerful thoughts. My one step of thought, even that's a subtle thought, my one step of that subtle thought to change will bring 1,000 steps from Baba to help me. But I need to desire that change. Sometimes we're very attached to our subtle weaknesses. They're very comfortable. But the biggest renunciation often is renunciation of our subtle weaknesses and our subtle ego. And so if I really want that, Baba, from my heart, Baba will help me. So I think it's a good sign that you recognize them, and the rest will follow. Does that help? Thank you. Don't be a victim of anyone, and don't be a victim of your own thinking either. Anything else?
Many times coming to retreats, I feel that the aim is to retreat and not to think about the old world. But especially coming to Madhuvan, it feels like all the thoughts about problems just emerge. When I'm in the Lokic world, I don't experience that much worries, but when I'm in Madhuvan, everything emerges in the form of obsessive thoughts. What would happen? What will happen when I go back? And it makes me feel like, well, I don't want to go back. I want to stay here. And what I do is to suppress these thoughts, but it doesn't come from faith. So what is the practical yukti to remove these thoughts?
Everyone heard the question? Yeah, it's a good question. You know, when we're in the world in our regular environment, it's like if you were to put green dye into a green pool, you wouldn't notice the difference. It wouldn't stand out, right? Here it's a white pool and you have the green dye. You know, so it's a pure atmosphere. And then my weak thoughts emerge. They seem more real and more accentuated because I'm in a different atmosphere. They're there anyway. But I notice them in this pure atmosphere because they stand out. It's like a black spot on a white dress, you know? So if those thoughts are troubling me, then I have to look a little deeper as to what are the roots of those thoughts. You know, one is to say, well, I'm worrying about the situation, I'm worrying about the people, I'm worrying about my job, I don't know, whatever it is. That's a kind of symptom. But if we go deeper, there's something about the self that we're worrying about. And that's the thing to identify and to change with Baba's help while you're here. And it may be that I don't feel adequate enough to deal with those situations, for example. It may be my lack of self-respect, for example. It may be some fear of unknown situations, whatever it is. There's some emotion that's at the root of that thinking. Am I right? So then, okay, Baba, let me see where I have to strengthen myself inside. Use the time in Madhuban to make yourself strong inside. We have to be so strong. Last season, Baba had, in one of the later Murlis, Baba said something I took to heart very much. You have the power to tolerate, but you don't have the power to merge. So you tolerate because you carry on. You don't let it affect you too much. You carry on, you do your work, you do your yoga, you do whatever you have to do, your service. But you can't merge those thoughts because there's a lack of power within. So usually that's the power that's needed, to see what's underneath it and to merge that thing. So if you merge the seed of your weak thoughts or worries, you merge the tree along with it. So the power to merge, because, you know, we're going to have to face more and more situations, whether it's situations in our family life, in our BK family life, whether it's situations with the body, the finances, the circumstances, whether it's the situation of people's sanskaras around me. These things external to me are not going to get less. They're definitely not going to go away, but they're not going to get any less. So what choice am I left with but to make myself very strong inside? And that's what Baba wants us to do. And Baba will help us. When I make that commitment, Baba will help me. Baba's help is guaranteed. He's guaranteed his help to us. But we don't take his help enough. Okay. Anything else? All the questions from the front row. Another one. Okay, after.
Regarding what you said, I mean, Baba gives us Srimad, and this I understood gives the power, and it's something I really try to refine for myself and to walk in that path. But why is it that still, like you said, it's we can't, it's if I relate it to what you said before, why is it so difficult to make my drama my friend? Because sometimes I just see the scenes and I'm...
Okay, whenever I go to Daddy with questions like that, she'll only tell me one thing: you don't have enough yoga. And you know, it's like you've got no defense against that. Because who can ever say, well, yes, Daddy, I have enough yoga? No, none of us. And that's the root of it. You know, coming back to basics. In all the global functioning in all the areas, this came up again and again. We need to put guidelines into practice. We need to put procedures into practice. We need to work out many things connected with the way we function in different countries, whether it's with the legal situation, the board, or whatever it is. But it'll only work if we deepen our spirituality and we pay that strict attention to our routine and we practice yoga. That's okay. So there's a question here.
Can you tell some ways how to accommodate faith in you?
Accommodate faith.
Yeah,
Faith.
faith.
How to accommodate or how to increase your faith, maybe that's the...
Yes, how to
increase your faith, okay. You know, it's interesting. In a sense, we're all here because of faith. You have faith, Baba's teaching, so you're sitting here. Otherwise, why would you spend the money, the time, and everything else to come to Madhuban? You know you're coming to meet Baba. Baba's your father. You know you in the last of your 84 births. You know that it's the cycle. You know it's the confluence age. There's faith. Right? Well, I hope so. But you know the other side of faith, the practical living with faith, is trusting everything that Baba says. So I have faith that God is telling me, don't worry. I know God's telling me that. Yes, God's telling me that. But I don't quite trust it. Do you see? I still think that, you know, sometimes if you think if you don't worry, something bad will happen. We need to worry. We don't need to worry because God is there for us. He's actually worked out everything in advance for us. So it's trusting, not just faith, but trusting everything that Baba tells us. And I'm giving class to myself here very much. So working with what Baba's told us, as if it's absolutely, completely true, no question. And that trust will develop. So you move through life instead of thinking, Baba always says questions, why, what, how, where, and he wants us to get rid of all the questions. Instead of approaching a situation with questions, I'll approach it with, this is what I have to do. I'll understand what I have to do. And I start to do it. In that way, my faith will increase. Studying the Murli will increase my faith. Will put that knowledge deeper into my bones. Experiencing all relationships with Baba will deepen my faith. But using the knowledge in my everyday life will definitely deepen my faith, because I will see it working for me step by step by step. Yeah? Om Shanti. I think it's 12:24. Unless there's any more burning questions. The brothers didn't ask any questions. Okay? Okay, let's have Baba's remembrance. Thank you. Om Shanti.
सुख हमें है कितना।